This is my favorite time of year reviewing the Oscar nominated short films. And I will say that this year it felt very fluid to me watching all the short films. I don't think anything was particularly stand out to me. And one of the reasons why I say that is I think like every single film kind of was just in there for a purpose. And that gives me my feelings about the short film Skin. And there's a couple of reasons why I say that, but first we're going to talk about the story. That the story is of this child who about is the stories of this child, and what happens is that his father is a white supremacist and neo-Nazi with like the tattoos that you see. So, he does things like he teaches his kid how to shoot. So his kid can shoot really good, and his kid has to be like less than 8 years old or something like that. So they spend the day shooting off guns, and then they go to a store, and what happens is that in the store, this child like sees this black man, and this black man takes a toy and is like showing it off to the kid and stuff. Just trying to be friendly and all that. And then his father comes, and his father gets into a confrontation with this black guy, and calls this guy the N word, follows this black guy out to his car, and beats him there with his friends. And at the end, and then at the end of the film, he gets kidnapped by a bunch of black guys. They get the revenge on him in a very symbolic way. And that's sort of the end of the movie. I'm not going to spoil anything for this. And what I think about this movie is that it's definitely relevant to what's been going on the past couple of years, like with Donald Trump and a lot of people who are white supremacists coming out of their closet, and they are talking about how make America great again means make America white again, and how people like this family, they're definitely trying to teach the younger generation to grow up with a lot of values, like knowing how to hunt, knowing how to provide for yourself, knowing that the Second Amendment is there to protect your family and stuff, and also like train your kids to be a hunter, and also think about what things should kind of set you off real quickly. And as far as the film goes, that there's a lot of things that I like. I think that for acting, the film was really standout. I also think that my favorite scene in the whole movie is when this father was taking his son surfing, and it's subtext. They don't explain to you what surfing is or what's surfing. And surfing is that they attach a couch to a tow truck, so it's like a car, a chain, and a couch, and the kids kind of go surfing down a hill. You might be a redneck if you take your kid couch searching type of thing. And I also like the scene where the mom is like, whereas the kid is holding onto a shopping cart, and the mom's kind of like fooling around in a grocery store, like going fast as she could, because in films it's good to have a bit of that slice of life type of thing, and also for a film that's very dark and intense, that it's good to have a bit of slice of life, because those type of things make a character feel more human. And also, if you're going to have a character that's a villain and stuff, sometimes it's good to have a bit of good and all that in there, because you can't make your characters too evil, because if not, it becomes very cartoonish, or it almost becomes like unwatchable or something like that. It's almost like what people say about Family Guy, where it seems like it's unwatchable or it's unlikable, because it seems like every character tries to top each other in how abhorrent a character they can be. And I think that the things I did not like about this film is that what happens is he beats up a black guy, and his kid is in the car and stuff. And what happens is this white supremacist guy, like he gets kidnapped by a bunch of black people, and it looks like that the black man's son is in that group of guys getting revenge for that man who was beaten up and stuff. And I just didn't like that, because I felt unrealistic. Obviously, it seemed like this black guy, was kind of well off, or it seemed like, he came from a sophisticated family. So why would his son be with a group of black guys who are a bunch of gangsters trying to get revenge on a white supremacist who beat up his father? Like, it didn't seem realistic to me. I also think that what the black guys did to him as a choice of vengeance, it seemed very, very cartoonish to me. And the ending kind of seemed very predictable after the vengeance type of thing happens. But I really think that also, this story is very, very cliche in the message, in a couple of messages, that, you shouldn't judge people from the color of their skin. Also, the other thing is that, if you raise your child around racism and hate, it can destroy a family, and it can come back to haunt you. And also the idea of, racism destroys family. So, and also the main character, like the white supremacist father, yeah, there were some things that reminded me of American History X. So, it is kind of a generic message of, racism is bad. But I think as far as a film goes, I think the Oscars picked this film because they wanted something edgy. And also with Black Klansman and If Beale Street Could Talk and other films that were talking about racism and, Black Klansman where the N-word is used, the K-word is used. This was kind of the Oscars gritty film. And I also know with the Oscars, especially like with this year and many other years, they kind of been a little bit more like, PC principle, PC culture. So, there's a couple of LGBTQ Oscar-nominated films, and one of them is in the shorts. There's films like this that talk about racism against African Americans, and there's also films that like have a lot of black actors and stuff like that. So I do think this film was kind of shoehorned in because it was talking about racism against people who are black and stuff. Because because they do want to kind of pander to that type of demographic. But also, this was a very gritty film. The N-word was used, a lot of bad language was used. So the Oscars also like to pick a film that's kind of like, I would call it, their Quentin Tarantino, where they want to pick something that has that bit of edge and fire, just so people can say, what the Oscars aren't just a bunch of uptight Hollywood snobs and all that. So I think that's kind of the politics behind this film and why it got selected. As far as, when you look at the content, I do think as a film, the editing was really good, the acting was really good, that a lot of the dialogue had foreshadowing. He's teaching his son that when you look at a snake, it's poisonous by looking at its skin. Hence, that's a metaphor for, how you can look at somebody's skin. Some people can look at somebody's skin and say, what, just because of somebody's skin color, I see them as poisonous or dangerous, something to kill or to hunt and stuff like that. But I also think, what I loved about the story, it is a really good message about what happens when you raise your child with a very primitive thinking as racism. It always ends up, shooting you in the back, and all that. But overall, I really liked this film. It was definitely edgy and gritty. It was definitely very well acted by the white supremacist family within this film. And I also just think that, like towards the ending where like they were introducing the black guys getting revenge and all that, I did feel it became a little too cartoony with their particular revenge, with how they're trying to make these guys look like these badass, thugs and all that. I did think it got to a point where it didn't have a lot of character dimension and all that. And also the other thing too that I liked about this film is that after they beat up this black guy, what I liked about this film, and it kind of made me laugh, is that nobody ended up searching for the white guys who beat him up and all that. And that made me laugh because that's very true and that's very realistic to some things that do happen with African Americans, where if a white person beats them up, sometimes people don't call the police, or sometimes the police don't even care and stuff. So I like that realism and all that. And I also just think that, that I like that a lot because that is true, that sometimes, racial violence or sometimes sexual violence and stuff, sometimes there are incidences where people get away with that, or, you call the police, or it happens and people don't report it because they know that, the police are probably going to side with the people who did it, or they're going to act like they're allies for you to kind of drop the charges. So, it also has the message of what happens when, when there's no justice but street justice and all that. So, it's definitely a very interesting piece. It's definitely very contemporary. I like the contemporary issues types of films. And that's all I gotta say about this. I think, so I like it as a story with good messages. I like it as a story with really good acting, especially by the child actor. The father's acting, the mother's acting was really good. I think the editing, putting them in real situations, and the directing was really good. overall very well put together piece and stuff. But I do think it is a little generic to have a message that racism is bad. And there's nothing really sophisticated to this story except, when you do bad shit to other people, bad shit happens to you. I really think that they could have made the story a little bit more dimensional or have a message that was a little digging deep and unique, but they didn't do that with this one. But that's all I gotta say about this film, Skin.